Woot.
Well, good afternoon. I got my little struggle comb going until a bigger one that I ordered comes in the mail. This looked a lot bigger on the internet when I ordered it. They got me.
Is it always the way it always looks bigger online?
Yeah. Struggling. But you know what? I'll make it do.
It's so little. How did they market that? Did they market it specifically as a beard comb? Because it's little.
They had a brush and a comb next to each other. And in a background, they look hand-sized.
Oh.
And the details is just like brush and comb set for your beard. It's like, beard, I have a fairly decent mustache going, so why not? And it wasn't expensive, but I got it, and I was like, just to give you guys some scale, look at that. I was like, how am I gonna? I got to do it with the pinky up.
Right. That's probably how you should do it. You should just stick with that one.
Just do it with the pinky up. I've been doing it wrong.
Yes. That's how it's got to be. It's supposed to be like that.
Do this.
That's a whole mood right there.
We will sit up talking and not even tell anybody who you are. I have a huge plethora of great, successful, and just worldly friends who've done a lot of stuff. Tell them who you are.
That's a big old question. I'm gonna try to keep it to the speech. But I'm Nakachi Clark Kazimu. I teach kindergarten and first grade in Oakland, California. I've been working in education, K through adult, for I don't know, probably over a decade now. Sometime around 2005, 2006, I started as a substitute teacher. Before that, I was a flight attendant. I was flew the friendly skies for 3.5 years at an airline that was based in Las Vegas. And before that, I was a bank manager and worked in finance for about 5 years or so. I am a reformed Christian. I've grown out of that. I'm happy to say. I've done a few things, but Buddhist. Yeah, I'm Buddhist. But you know, even that is loaded because I went to Japan a couple years ago, and it was my first time in a Buddhist country, and I came out of there like I can't even call myself Buddhist no more. I'm on some like I don't even know what this is. Wow. You know what I'm saying? I'm on like the Cliff Notes Buddhism, like the 7-Eleven Buddhism. I don't even know, but they doing it real.
In case y'all were wondering, I'm still team heathen all the way. No gods, no kings.
There you go. I'm Mick Buddhist, but you know there's a whole lot of space for heathenism in there. You know, we live in it. It's cool.
and now you've been teaching. I got to tell you, throughout this entire thing, the group of friends that I've realized I've underappreciated more and more are my friends who are in education. Because more than any other group, educators and my friends who are in school now, in college, and I also have friends whose children are in high school and children are in hey, look at Renee. She lives in a Zen Buddhist temple in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil.
See, that's full. She the real deal over there. I'm a baby Buddhist. You know what I mean? Zen Buddhism is the track that I'm on, but man, there's some folks, folks who live in the temples, nuns, priests. Those are the folks I really admire. But Buddhism has been the belief system, I guess, if you want to call it that has made the most sense to me. After some exploration of several different avenues. So yes, big up to you, Renee.
Well, and this is what I tell everybody. There is enough room for everybody. And I got friends like Renee. We've done some things. Let's see. I'll show you guys. Renee has come back several times. She's a dear, sweet friend. We've done is more tantric than hedonistic, sneaky quarantine sex. Renee has been there and done that.
Nice.
Renee has been there and done that. And she also has her own YouTube channel, and I'll flag everybody to that one. Let's see. There we go. But I hope everybody gets a chance to check out. She's an interesting character, and I really do hope you can come visit us in Brazil when the world, I won't use the phrase go back to normal because that's never going to happen, but when the world opens up again, I hope that you come out to Brazil and hang out with me and maybe go to the temple. I know she lives there 24/7, and they are their own style. You know what? I would let you two come in and chat about it, because you two need to talk. You know what? You need to go on Renee's channel, because I don't know anything about it, but you two, look at that. See, she just did self-pleasure and sanity conversations with Renee and Jasmine. Can I tell you that the language professional in me has a problem with using "and" in a sentence twice?
Of course you could tell me that. I'm a writer. I get it. I 100% get it. Yes, it's cool. Yeah. It's all right, though.
And I love Renee.
No judgment. This is a judgment-free zone. This is a judgment-free zone. So I'm not even counting the ands, I promise.
I'll put it in here. I'll say, be sure to check out Renee. There. You know, as a teacher, I've talked to teachers, and everyone's first concern seemed to be, oh, the children are going to fall behind even farther on their math. They're going to fall behind even farther on their science. And oh my goodness, I totally didn't say hello to Raining Woman. She's somebody else awesome who I think you get along with. I'm
already getting along with that avatar.
Yeah, you need to ask her to tell you.
I'm already getting along with that. That's beautiful.
You need to ask her, if you go as a guest on her show, and you can tell her I said this, come on as a guest, you two can play relaxing music and talk, and just when you two are at a point where everything seems peaceful, ask her about the last time she punched a woman in the face.
Oh, what? I hope maybe we could compare
notes. You
heard
a story about that.
Maybe we could compare notes. Because sometimes you need to crack somebody in the mouth.
She's got stories. She's got stories. She really is a sweet woman. Very feminine.
Oh, I love it.
It's terrifying when you realize what she's capable of. Like, I tell y'all what, she's got to come back and hang out with us again. A lot of teachers were talking about, hey, I'm worried about the math, I'm worried about the science, but I don't know that we'll ever go back to learning in school. But here's the question that I wanted to really kind of hash out with you. There's no agenda, but now I know a lot of teachers who are working with their children online, and you told me earlier that you use private videos to share with your oh, look, Renee sent you a message.
Oh, see, that's what, a block from the beach. You had me at We Allow People.
Yeah, I can vouch for both of you. I can vouch for both of you to each other. So
actually, she had me at Rio. She had me at Rio.
And then come to Sao Paulo, and we can talk about some other things. This is where the education capital is. The money capital is a different place. I've had a lot of my friends who are teachers talk about dealing with the children and talking to them online and things like that. But now they're worried about the children's sanity. And I don't say that as a joke. I'm not taking mental health as a joke. Today, I will do this in the future. I will certainly make fun of crazy people because I make fun of everybody. But right now, in the context, I won't make that joke about children. They're worried about children. They're worried about not the long-term effects of not being able to do your math and science homework in front of your teacher because you didn't do it at home, but what is happening with children. Either they're forerunners of adults or trailing indicators of adults. I'm not sure which is better or which is worse. Locked in a house with no access to their friends, no access to the playgrounds, no access to all those things that help define childhood outside the classroom, even though the classroom is the most important. What happens now? Where are they? Where are they mentally? And I'll show you something that, hey, how you doing, Tanaka? Good afternoon from Sao Paulo. I'll show you one of the most frightening things I've seen in a long time, and then I'm going to hand the mic over to you because I want just your feedback on it. This is my Instagram. I use it sometimes, but you see this picture here? That's a playground where I would go on the weekend with my kettlebell to do outdoor kettlebells with my friends. And actually, what am I saying? People don't want to hang out and do kettlebells. But I went there one Saturday, and the most terrifying sight in the world is a playground with no children in it. That's, you know, you're normally used to hearing, go get the dog, go get the dog before he pees there. Take that out of your mouth. Stop it. Go get your sister. Go get your sister before she runs in the street. No, you can't have another candy bar. You're only going to get one today. If you say that again, we're taking you home. You know, all the stuff that parents say to children, and it was silent. As a matter of fact, I went the other day because of the way quarantine works. All non-essential things, which is considered anything medical, meaning hospitals or pharmacies, or any place with food, meaning you can go to a supermarket, they number who can go in and who can come out, and you can order food from a restaurant to carry out at the curb, or you can order delivered, but everything else is closed. The police realized that even after the kids were gone, guys like me and some of my meathead friends, we'd still go to the park at night to do our kettlebell exercises. Some guys would even get gloves and spray down the outdoor chin-up equipment and do chin-ups. So I went there the other night, and you know how you pretend like you weren't going somewhere? And I was like, yeah. They had two different groups of police, one on each corner, to stand there like this.
Wow.
Like, we know you've been coming here at night working out. When we say quarantine, we mean take your ass back home.
Right.
And they just looked at me, and I was like, hey, officer, I was around the block for my health tonight with my workout shorts on and a kettlebell. Where do you see your children going, you know, with this? And I only look for the qualification of you're a teacher. I know you've done other things, but as somebody on the ground with them, what do you see?
Well, I think that there's a real seismic upset that is happening, and it's an upset on the surface because of a foundation that has never changed. And what I mean by that foundation is that children have, or let me roll it back, the education system, and I can only speak for what we are living here in America, is that it's never really been about the child. It's never really centered on their social emotional well-being. It's never centered on them being liberated human beings. It's primarily the intention of state-sponsored education has been to program and train workers. And so that...
Can you repeat that sentence one more time in its entirety?
No, but I can paraphrase myself probably. Let me see. The foundation of education in this country has primarily been for the programming and training of workers.
Woo!
Well, it's really not new. It's not, it's out there. That knowledge is out there to the point where, we don't even have to reference, to give no footnotes on it. Like, it's pretty well understood. And so I would say that this time of shelter in place and this time of quarantine has not changed that reality. What it has done is, like the way that tectonic plates shift and create upheaval on the surface. What's happening is that truth is the shifting and the exposure of that truth is what I think we're seeing now. And so, to get back to your question of the concern and anxiety around children falling behind and children, not getting an education and not getting this content, what that is really saying is that children are not that the standards set up by a capitalistic, white supremacist, patriarchal system are no longer applicable. And so what children are falling behind from is not the desire to learn. That's innate. What they're falling behind from is white supremacist, capitalist, patriarchal standards. So in the US, that looks like Common Core standards, and there being benchmarks and assessments that specifically determined if you are in first grade or second grade, or if you are advanced or if you are behind. And all of these markers, all of these benchmarks are first and foremost capitalistic, white supremacist, patriarchal. That's the foundation. And so if we're talking about children learning, everything, especially during the times when children are very young and they are in these sensitive periods and their brains are just sponges, like the mind of the child, the most absorbent material known to man. And they are learning whether you want them to or not. And anyone who's the parents of small children know that this is true. They pick up on things you don't want them to hear. They repeat and mimic characteristics about you that you don't want them to see. Like that, you can't stop them from learning. And so by being out of the classroom, learning hasn't stopped, but the very narrow lane with which we have given children to learn is a broken road. Like the pavement is like, it's no longer travelable. It's no longer sustainable. And so I think that's what we're seeing. That's what I'm seeing. I think there are a lot of different experiences here. There are folks who can afford to stay home and bring materials into the home and give time for their children to explore and to do these things. And then there's families on the other end of that spectrum who, for one, didn't receive that kind of education themselves and are now in a position where they are their child's sole educator, and they are looking at these standards as what learning is, because that's what we've been fed. That's what education is. That's how it's been defined for us. And so there is an anxiety there, and there is a fear there, and there is a desperation there, because if you can't guarantee a roof over your head, if you can't guarantee healthy food on the table, it's very difficult to then reach beyond that to think about educating someone else, or what does education mean? And so I think that what we're really seeing is a peeling back of decades and generations, a rip in the time-space continuum, where we have the opportunity now to reach back to the ancestral knowledge and understanding of the human being, and also reach forward into the growing field and knowledge that we are getting in neuroplasticity, and be able to really bring about a new way, not a reformed way, not a this way with some add-ons, but a totally different way.
So let me ask you this: what are the oldest group of children that you teach?
I teach kindergarten, and next year these kindergartners will be my first grade class.
Okay. As you communicate with them online, how has their behavior changed learning from home versus, because where you are, you're in Oakland, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to ever have to give up your location because people will be bombarding you with, hey, can you be a private teacher for my kids? But where you are, when you consider an affluent, working class, or below working class school system?
So a little bit of context, I teach at a public charter school, and so we are chartered by OUSD, but we're basically a district of one. We're just one very small, less than 200 students. Right now we're K through 8. Next year we'll be K through 5. And we are Title I school, so I think over half
I don't know what that
of
means. You're gonna have to open that up for me.
I'm telling you. Yeah, over half of our students qualify for free, reduced, or reduced lunch, which means the economic situation of their parents is such that they are low income, unemployed, on state assistance programs, etc.
Okay, let me look this up real quick, and I'm going to share it with the team. It says here, Title I. Law and legal definition of Title I school, the school receiving federal funds for Title I students. The basic principle of Title I is that schools with large concentrations of low-income students will receive supplemental funds to assist in meeting students' educational goals. Okay, so the children in your school don't come from affluent areas, and they need...
Most of them don't. We definitely have a range, but the majority of them do not. That's correct.
So with these children, if you have a great barometer, because you can look at the children and say, okay, well, these children come from a place where they do need benefits. These other children come from a place that don't. How has it affected each group differently?
Well, I think there's a presumption in the question that I'm seeing all my students, and I am not. There's a great deal of discrepancy in the children who are able to get online and have access to the technology to get online, have the support at home to stay online and do all the activities, and children who do not. So I have 18 children in my class. I see 5, 6 maybe of those students, and it's usually the same 5 or 6 students.
Out of how many? What kind of percentage are we looking at here?
I have 18 students, so that would be half, less than half. Less than half, yeah.
That's a third.
So this has also created it's opened up a huge hole around childcare. Not, when parents could send their kids to school, I would see all of my students. Some might come late, but I would see everyone because they had to get to school because parents had to get to work. And now that some of those, well, almost all of those parents are now working from home or are considered essential workers and are still having to leave home to get to work, there is not as much, there's nowhere to send their kids to. And so having those students at home has definitely significantly impacted how many children I'm able to see a day.
Wow. And so do those 5 represent a spectrum when you open your computer and see who arrived?
Yeah, for the most part, they're my students who have already, were already ahead. They've already hit all the benchmarks. They were already doing really well on, different assessments. They already knew all their letters sound, they already had all the material pretty much down.
How you doing, Green Machine? Let's talk soon. Well, okay, then I have to look at it from the other side of the coin. If you're looking at the children who have already, in a classroom of 18 children, been proven to be mentally capable of and backed up enough by their families enough to be able to stay ahead, does that also mean the children that were on the bubble or on the border or even slightly below are going to fall behind even worse?
Well, yeah, if we're still holding to the idea that the Common Core standard is where they should get, yes. I'm not convinced. I'm a public school teacher. I have a master's degree in special education. I have 2 teaching credentials for the state of California. And I do not believe that Common Core standards should be the sole marker of success or achievement. I think what I'm seeing is that the students who already were doing school well, it supports other folks' research and evidence of how having parents who have also succeeded in school, done school well, who have secondary degrees and such as that, who graduated from high school, that it really isn't about the child's learning as much as it is around the context that the child is learning within. And so
wait, I don't understand that statement. I don't understand that statement.
So it isn't a child's effort, a child's engagement, a child's interest is less a factor in how successful they will be academically than the level of wealth and the level of education of their family members, their parents, whoever is raising them. And so if I had a child, I have a master's degree, you know, all these different things, my child is going to be more academically successful because they have me to come home to. They have me to, give a critical eye to the curriculum and to keep their teachers in check and to make sure that I'm doing all the preschool things and I have a better understanding of their brain, et cetera, and learning and what the forecast is, like where I need them to get to, than a parent who dropped out of high school or, has not had that experience and really is just dependent on the school system to get their child somewhere. That's what that means.
Oh, well, here, Nathan not only agreed, but he also said a richer environment.
Yeah. The environment that a child grows up in is integral. It's not optional. Like, it is the thing that develops their brain, not their brain. The brain comes already ready. Like in the womb, in the fetus, neurons are already connecting. We understand from brain science that the brain starts developing within like 2 weeks of conception. Like we ain't got to worry about the brain. What we have to put our attention to and really put a lot of emphasis and seriousness around is the environment that the child comes into. And that's not to say that children who are born to parents who, were dropouts in elementary school or what have you, it's not to say that those children are not able to succeed. That all children have the potential, but the number of children who will succeed when many of them have an impoverished environment versus those who have books around and all these different things to stimulate them, we're going to see it's more the norm for those children who have an enriched environment and much more the exception for students who do not have that environment to succeed.
Let me raise my hand on one thing then. Where a child is born, no, let me back that back. The earliest you'll see a child as an educator is probably going to be 5 years old, right? Am I wrong?
No, there's preschool. 3 is probably the earliest. Okay. 3 years old.
Great. Let's say 3. By that time, what effect can a public education system or a private education system have on anything other than quantifiably measuring how much they learn? Because no one can do the thing from zero. By the time they get to you, I'll give you an example. When I was a young man, I got sent to this school retreat for kids that were doing great. And we had all these presentations by educators talking about how awesome we were and we're going to go to college and making us feel good. Then they had one guy that stood up and he says, "Do any of you know who I am?" He walks on the stage and we said, "Well," a couple of them said, "Aren't you Arthur somebody?" And he says, "Yes, as a matter of fact, do you know where I work?" And they said, "There's this building downtown that I don't know what it is. Some people say it's a jail." He said, "No, it's a place where they send juvenile offenders who are violent. And I'm the administrator. If you know who I am, that's probably not good for you. Because if by the time you get to me, you haven't corrected your ways, I only have one solution for you." I feel like it may be that way with education. By the time someone gets to, first, not just a teacher, but a teacher like you who cares, what can you do besides quantifiably measure which children can meet the Common Core standards? If we don't have to agree that's a good thing, but which children can read adequately and which ones can't. you can't go back in time and say, well, I have to realize and respect that this child was born into a situation with one parent who was abusive and another parent who was addicted, so I'm going to change the burden of knowledge for him. Is this a fair thing? No. But how do we navigate that?
Well, the brain is not a static, it doesn't stop growing. It doesn't stop learning. And so the fact that a child has already had 3 years of neuron connection or even synaptical pruning, which is when brain synapses that are not used basically die off. Even though that cycle has been happening for years, it does not mean that there is no growth that can then happen, that there are no new neural pathways that can be formed. So personally, I feel like there is a great deal of work that I can do with a child. Obviously, the younger I get them, the better. But the beauty of the human brain is that there is no stopping point. There is never a point when all hope is lost. As long as there is life, there is hope, period. And so I can do a whole lot more. Actually, I would personally, my job is not to quantify their reading level. My job is to make sure that those neurons continue to generate and regenerate, that I am taking advantage of what the human brain offers everyone who touches the life of another human being, not just the life of a child. I have the same impact on my kindergartners that I have on you right now. I have the potential to introduce new experiences and new information for you that will take your brain in new avenues. And the more you traverse those avenues and the more solidified those synapses become, the more intelligent you are immediate, period. And so I see that as my job, is not to give up hope, is not to say, oh, well, what's done is done, but to continue to perpetuate the growth of the human brain.
It's a very nuanced answer, and I appreciate that. It actually makes me feel good to have been so wrong. Because I think
right
when as I rapidly approach maturity, I feel more and more the pressure of how hard it is to get away from what you were. I look at my own life experience and I can compare that with a relatively concentrated group of people in Niagara Falls, New York. It's a small town now, actually, because the brain drain has been so heavy. And something that my mother talked to me about, probably one of my breaks from my first year of college, that I had to get enough years under my belt to experience, is she said, I want you to look back on the kids who bullied you when you were younger. I want you to look back as you grow on the kids who you couldn't understand. How come he just can't get his life right? Then you look back and you realize, I know men that are in prison now over things that happened to them. Let me rephrase that committed the crime that got them sentenced to prison in their 30s over things that we saw happen to them when we were 15.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And Nathan said, really, you? Yeah, I was bullied relentlessly. I tell people all the time, I'm a lot more than, the brilliant mustache and the attitude, just waking up every morning.
Is there anyone who wasn't bullied? Like, where? I need to know, where's the people who weren't bullied, because I've never met one.
Really?
Is that a thing that people don't get bullied? Do you know people who were?
When you're a kid, you don't know that yet. When you're a kid, you think it's just you.
Oh, sure. Like, but I'm talking about now, like, go ahead.
No, I'll always concede to you because you're my guest.
Oh no, I was just thinking now as an adult and what we do know, it's interesting to me that folks are surprised when someone says they were bullied as a child. Like, who wasn't? I don't know no adults who weren't bullied as children.
Well, let me address what Nathan said here. And about being wrong also, LOL. Yeah, being wrong has never bothered me. That's why I have so many advantages in life. If you can teach me something, I'm going for it. And Sid said, even the bullies get bullied. I'll give you an intersection of racism and bullying. When I was in high school, for whatever reason I never understood, I'm 5 feet 6 inches tall. I started lifting weights because I have that classic, I can't be tall, so I'll just be a monster. My body is a combination of a fire hydrant and a rhinoceros. That's cool for me. I lift heavy weights and I do big, strong man things. But I was also a short kid, fat kid, who used to wet the bed when he was a kid. I think I still do on occasion. I'm not sure. He said there was this girl who was easily 6 feet tall when we were in the 11th grade, 10th grade. She was easily 220 pounds. And I'm not going to give her name because what I'm going to say is awful, but it's true. She was a extraordinarily unattractive troll of a girl. And she punched me in my face one day, and I punched her back, and I nearly got thrown out of the school system for it because she was white. As I grew older and rapidly approached maturity, I think back to some of the wisdom that my parents gave me and my mother, who would sit down to me trying to get me to become more patient. I see how hard her life must have been. The anger. And who else could she pick on? She had to find somebody. She wasn't going to pick on any other girl because they already made fun of her for being so big. I know guys in jail over decisions and things that happened to them before. And it's like, so as I rapidly approach maturity, I get stuck in that whole, are there things we can't come? Wait, Green Machine said something. I'm not quite sure if that's the way he meant it, but I'm not sure there are things in high school. He said the people who peaked in high school don't get bullied. Didn't get bullied. Okay. If you were in high school and that was your peak, you were not bullied in high school. But at the same time, from my perspective, I don't know anybody who peaked at high school that's still doing well. On my Facebook, I have friends that constantly put up things that we did 23 years ago in high school. And I'm thinking... And
have you interviewed those who peaked in high school to be able to make a blanket statement like that they did not get bullied? Because I call bullshit. I don't know about Green Machine. I gotta call bullshit, fam. Unless you got some data, I'm not going for it.
Oof. And Claire said maybe she liked you.
Oh, probably.
I never.
But it doesn't. I think your point. I think your point is valid in that the hurt people is how the saying goes, and people who cause the most harm. That's not something that we're born with. We learn harm. We learn how to hurt people real bad, and so I think to your point, I think yes, that the pain that she inflicted upon you is probably just one of the many concentric circles of the pain that she was closest to.
Wow. That's heavy.
I think it's also heavy. I think it's also heavy when we think about the pain that we have caused others. It's easy to look at what was done to me. It's easy to name my bullies and the ways they scarred me in the ways that the ways that they scarred me, the ways that I was hurt by it. But that hurt not until I became an adult. And it's also why I consider myself a practicing Buddhist now, because it wasn't until I was introduced to Zen Buddhism and the Buddhist practice that I began to think about the trajectory of hurt. Right? So the hurt that I received didn't just come to me and stop, and now I'm the victim and I just have received all this hurt and I ain't hurt nobody. No. That's not the case at all. That I have also intentionally and unintentionally hurt others in ways that I felt were justified as well as unjustified. And so when we think about those concentric circles, the vibration of pain, the vibration of hurt, it becomes very important to consider what we're doing with it, because it's an energy, it's a vibration. It's like the idea of quantum physics, and the idea that a butterfly's wing in Rio is creating thunderstorms in New York City. That energy doesn't stop with us, but it can. It can, but until we become intentional about it, it doesn't. And bullies are a perfect example of that. And I think it also goes back into the power of childhood and the brain, the ability for the brain to, the absorbent mind doesn't just absorb the good stuff. That is so important. And if I think about what is my job, I became a teacher for one very, very, very specific reason: to alleviate the suffering of children. And that means for me that I must always, and it is a process, like it's not something that there's no conclusion, but the journey, my Buddha walk, is to alleviate the suffering of children. And so if every time I meet a child, and sometimes the children that I meet are in their 50s. Sometimes the children that I meet, are 5 or 6 years old. All of us have to pass through that gate and hold on to who the children that we were. Much like there are layers to the brain, from the reptilian mind up to the neocortex. But I feel like it's very important for me, as someone who has chosen to alleviate the suffering of children, to always see the human being as filled with untapped potential. And I feel so excited by brain science and what we're learning about neuroplasticity, because it just confirms that belief for me, that the potential never ends, that our ability to grow and reflect and change never ends. Octavia Butler said, change is God. Change is the only constant. And that is something that I find endlessly exciting. It is what gives me hope in times when I see children who have different disorders, that is really just, they are not in the order that we have left for them, that we have placed for them, that we have tracked for them. And when I see folks who are, incarcerated or formerly incarcerated, the potential of the human being is intact. We have not yet, and I hope we never do, develop something that can take that away from us.
Well, first, I want to go all the way back. You have a serious new fan.
Claire, what's good, girl?
I want everybody to make sure you share this on your Facebook page. But the important part is to make sure that you click subscribe on the YouTube page, because that's where all the new stuff comes. And I appreciate that. So make sure you click on the YouTube link directly. Make sure you subscribe, and I appreciate that. Wow. Yeah, it's. I did an article once. I'm still talking like I'm writing stuff down. A lot of people don't know I've done far more writing than I have ever done on YouTube. But I did something about a call I got. Or not a call, a Facebook message I got. I did When Bullies Return. I got a message on Facebook. It was a friend request. The friend was somebody who bullied me in high school. I accepted it.
I've had this experience as well.
Okay. Oh, okay. Tell me, how did yours end up? And I'll give you the end of my story, I promise.
Yeah, tell your story, and then I'll get on.
Well, this person started talking to me like we actually were friends in high school. And I'm thinking, you were one of the reasons, and I say that funny now, you're one of the reasons I chose to go to college and get out, because I didn't want to be around people like you. But after a couple of stilted conversations back and forth, I got one final message. And this is what it said. We always hated you because the teachers talked to you like you had a future. That got me with feelings. That got me in the feelings hard.
And now I'm mad at those teachers personally. The fuck? Like, all children have a future. All of them. Every single
one. I don't
one.
know where you went to school, but I can tell you I've seen situations where you have teachers who are A, not paid what they're worth, B, in an overflowing classroom, and C, have to strike a Faustian bargain with their own conscience on which children to focus on. My mother told me that one of the reasons that she and my father were such irritants and aggravating people was something that I didn't understand until I got older. The teachers will pay the most attention to the children with parents who care. My parents were far from perfect. I can go, on that forever. But they made sure that first they knew I have parents, I have a mother, and I have a father, and they will just show up unannounced to the school to look at all my class. This is back before people were going crazy, and my mom would just walk into the school and go to my classroom, and I would just see her peeking in the door to see how I was behaving and see how teacher was talking to us. Donnell Knox, you got a fan?
Donnell Knox, yes, that's an old homie from elementary school. Good to see you, brother.
Hey, you know what?
So,
Donnell, do us a favor. Share this on your page, but make sure you go and click on the Facebook link and click subscribe there, because that's how you get the new content and the new interesting things that we talk about.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry, done? Were you still talking? Did you have some more thought?
No, I wanted your bully story.
Okay. So before I get into my story, I want to address your point about teachers having to make these kind of Faustian decisions. I've been in education for quite some time now. Like I said, about a decade, somewhere around there. And I started out as a substitute teacher. And what that means is that I was in a whole lot of different classrooms, usually not more than 1 or 2 days at a time. And so that allowed me to see a lot, not just of students, but of teachers. I've been in a lot of teacher staff lounges, a lot of break rooms. And early on in my education, or in my career, and the education that being a substitute teacher afforded me. So before I took any classes or any training programs in becoming a teacher, I first learned from other teachers and just from doing. And I was in the staff lounge on a break at a high school, and a teacher came in, and he was that teacher that you're referring to. He was a teacher who had made a line in the sand of the students that would benefit and the students who would not. And he made a comment that I've always remembered, and he referred to a group of students as future convicts.
Oh,
and there is all of those things that you brought up: underpaid, overworked. I'm that right now. Like, that's not anything that has changed. Like, it's now common knowledge that teachers are some of the, for the impact that they have, are some of the least paid folks who do what they do. And I can only speak for myself, because I became a teacher to alleviate the suffering of children. That is not why everyone becomes a teacher. I'm fully aware of that. But there is no economic circumstance. Hear me. There is no workload. There is no there is no capitalist marker that could convince me to write off a child. Period. None. I don't care. I could be living out of my car, carrying books in a cardboard box from class to class. There is nothing that will ever convince me to write off a child, to choose who will live and who will die academically. I will always speak to every child as the way I believe that within them there is a future and a hope. And every time that it riles me up, because there is no excuse for it. Yes, we are tired. Yes, we are underappreciated. Yes, parents get on our last nerves. And I will give the same level of education to the child whose parents I never see, to the child whose parents show up to the school reeking of alcohol, who can barely give me a clear sentence. I will give that child the same level, probably a touch or 15 higher than the child whose parents are just always, well, what standard are you covering today? Or, the divide, I'm trying to think of the specific term for it. I see you, Alex. Liliana, that's my baby. But the gap, that's what we call it, the achievement gap. The achievement gap is just as much a product of those Faustian decisions that you mentioned as they are a matter of structural violence. Structural violence is always executed by human beings who agree to them. And so that's my piece on that. We in that situation, I feel like the teachers were as much did as much to create the bullies that attacked you as the bullies themselves. So that's that part. And it's very interesting. Donnell, I don't know if you still on here, but this is funny to me, Yusef, because you asked about bullies. And when I was in elementary school, I'm gonna say Donnell's name because this, that's my man's right. That's my friend now. But when I was in elementary school, man, Donnell tortured me about my name. Oh man, he thought it was the funniest thing till I just totally make fun of my name, Nakachi. And it resulted in me not wanting to tell people my middle name, which is beautiful. My name is Nakachi Majida, and my parents put a great deal of love and intention into that. And the answer to your question of how did it work out, Donnell is on this call right now. You know what I'm saying? I feel very fortunate that the things and the markers that happened to me in the past, that I've been able to find the tools and lived long enough. That's the real point, to have lived long enough to have healed from that. And the queen, that's my sister right there. Oh, that's my heart. The queen. I'm so happy.
I got all these new faces here. Make sure you click on the YouTube link and click subscribe, because she'll be back. Because clearly, apparently a lot of y'all like her more than you like me, so that's okay.
You invite me, let you know my folks is coming. If you invite me to anything, my people's is coming straight up.
We're talking about a lot of things. We talk about social issues like we're talking about now. Because I'm a former financial professional, we talk a lot about money, debt, staying away from debt, how to build. We also do a lot of talk about international issues. I've lived in 15 countries. Right now, I'm a permanent resident legally in the country of Brazil, where I'm living. I'll be getting my citizenship papers back as soon as I finish when the quarantine is over and the government.
Oh, you're doing it official, Yusef? That's dope.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's something else you're more than welcome to come in one of my group chats about, because, and this is a conversation I'm going to have a conversation with some other people with later this week. This is related to education. We're going to get back on the path, but I'm going to tell you, I have found in my life experience, the countries that I've been to, in the group that I'm in, I could be selection biased, for underprivileged people, be they Native American, be they Black American, be they anybody who feels like the boot of oppression is on them, or more importantly, maybe on their children, speaking a second language fluently, I have found over and over again, gives you a way out in ways that in 2020 we couldn't have imagined before, because it goes much farther than just being able to say hello and have a casual conversation with someone else. It goes to the level of, for example, an example that I'm going to talk about later on with another guest on Tuesday for the people who are coming back is, I know people, both through the YouTube universe and personally, that because they got a second language down, they were able to apply for college in a country where that second language is spoken. So let's just say, I'm just going to pick a random language. Let's just say you speak German, and your parents made sure, as a family, because you can't just tell a kid to do it, as a family, you decided we're going to learn how to speak German. Now, the kids might not know this, but what we know is the cost of college education is so extraordinarily high that even for people smart enough to get in, they can't afford it. But what most people don't know is that throughout the rest of the world, college is actually not that expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens when you're in a situation where you can say, I want you to apply to this University of Berlin, let's just say, to be stereotype heavy. And if you get accepted, they would still have to pay for your plane ticket. They would still have to pay your eating expenses. But that's all still, let's call it a fraction of what it would cost in the United States. And you're doing it in a different country under a second language. Is going to give you an enormous amount of leverage in life. I've seen so many Black people who are part of, and again, we've talked about this before, the brain drain, right? That brain drain of educated, successful, full of potential Black people who decide and realize, I don't owe America anything. I'm going to go someplace where I'm just appreciated, which has been something Black people have done since, in my lifetime. I remember reading Baldwin talking about the struggle between knowing I can live anywhere else in the world and be treated like just a guy who's a writer, maybe a Black writer, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be murdered for it. And going back to the United States to help the cause. Like, that's a real struggle. A lot of the most successful Black people I know have is, I know I can go back home and help and also be the victim of random violence, or also be in a place where I can help, but the small percentage of people who would learn from that help, it gets awkward. So we're going to talk about that. For the record, how many languages do you speak? Are you English or bilingual or trilingual? I never asked.
No, I just speak English. I can make my way around a little bit in Spanish, but I understand more than I can speak. But I wouldn't claim that. I speak English primarily.
Well, I'll tell you this: if you ever want it, I have. Where is it? I was going to show it to you on screen, but I have in my possession a copy of Pimsleur. And I will give you, if you want to learn a second language, I'm a big advocate for Pimsleur because it fits my lifestyle. It's extraordinarily effective. They teach no reading. They teach no writing. It is 100% spoken. 3 months of that, I can tell you my friends who speak South American Spanish. I can tell you my friends who speak, well, me who's approaching my Portuguese. It's an enormous tool. If you ever want it, and now a lot of people have the time for it, it's yours. You just tell me what you want, and I'll make sure I get it digitally. This is an article I wrote about Portuguese.
So first off, yes, hook me up. All learning tools, send them my way. I'm with it. I also want to address what you brought up about this kind of duality, this kind of dichotomy of, do I stay in America or do I leave where I could be appreciated? And I think it's important, especially for American-born Black and brown people, and I can speak specifically to being American-born of African descendants, is that it is incredibly important for us to deactivate the capitalist thinking in our minds of I have to take care of myself. This rugged individualism, this idea of I am either going to be destroyed or I am going to be appreciated. Like there, and it's so interesting to me that you brought up the example of James Baldwin, because James Baldwin had moved to and was living in France long before I came upon his work. And he is one of my life's greatest teachers, both as a thinker, first as a writer, but I would say, actually, I couldn't even say which was first, simultaneously as a writer and a thinker. And I believe that he is the example of the patriot who never let go of the people who were still in American bondage. And that is what I hope that we forward, not the idea that we escape. Like it's, if we could all get on the Harriet Tubman train of thought, we could undo so much social disparity. We could get so many people liberated if we understood that our freedom is only to show a path by which others can follow, that we can then traverse, not to get free and stay free. And oh, it's so nice to be free. Whew! Of course it's nice to be free. Right? And there are once we get to that place, once we get liberated, just like children whose future is more specifically determined by the freedom of their parents, we are in the best position to set our own folks free. And so that's the mentality that I'm just, I want that to expand in our world.
Then let me do two things. One, I want to read something by dear sister Deborah. She said you can't stay long. Congrats on your citizenship. I'm a permanent resident now. I'll get my citizenship after all this is over. I would do the same thing, but I need to get my Social Security, but truly working on getting out of here, meaning out of the United States. This time we'll stay out. Nothing's changed, different day, same crap as before. You're very right. You will always be labeled as a minority in America. And Sister Deborah is a woman living through her golden years in life, and I met her overseas. She's a vivacious, young-hearted woman who's amazing, and I have a great deal of respect for her. I also say that to say this, and this is where you and I will diverge. And I say this to you with love and respect. I can tell you my quality of life is better because I got out and I stayed out. I bought as much education as I could afford, and I chose to live in places where I could simply worry about, I don't know, building a business, making good decisions, not being randomly murdered by any white American, be they law enforcement or not, who decides to kill me. Part of the reason people have a hard time realizing I'll be 43 in July is I don't have those stress markers that comes from living under constant oppression. I've had friends talk to me about how hard it is after going on a holiday somewhere, coming to see me, and they realize the thing that they felt that was different is you weren't constantly worried about that next terrible thing that was going to happen to you, either on purpose or just violently. I can tell you, I don't owe America anything. I just don't. I don't think that Native Americans or Black Americans should even pay taxes or even be allowed to serve in the United States military. Enough of us have already died. First opportunity, and for the record, hold on, let me go. I'm going deep in the bag on this one. For anybody who is interested in the means, mechanisms, and the things that I did to get out, hold on, let me open this up for you.
And I also, while you're doing that, I want to say there's a difference between, it sounds to me like you're striking a difference between America, the state, and Americans, the people. Is that right?
No, same thing. The same thing.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
I'm going to put this in the comment section. This is my Patreon. I have had a glut of people coming to me for information that I have. By the way, my YouTube is always going to be free. I'm not even going to monetize it. This is where I give a lot of fun information about a lot of the things that I do. I have actually had to start a separate Patreon account for people who come to me and say, I want specific information on things. How do I set up a registration for a Brazilian Social Security number before I arrive in Brazil? What is the mechanism through which I go and get my federal background check done? What was the last one we did here? live to get.
So can I ask another clarifying question then?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Clarifying question. When you say that you don't owe anything to America, are you also referring to the Black and Native American people that you mentioned who shouldn't have to pay taxes because we've died enough and should be? Is that, are you including them in your America?
But I included them in the group of people who also owed America nothing. So we're on the same side of the fence.
Yes, that's okay. That's what I thought you were saying, but that's what I meant by American the people. That when you say I don't owe America anything, you are referring to the system of state violence that has disenfranchised and killed Black, brown, Native American people, and it's that America that you don't owe anything to. But Black people,
America. But when were we American? How do we get? When were we American? At what point were we American? Including today.
Okay, so you're not saying you don't owe. I'm just making sure you're not saying you don't owe Black people anything.
You know what I owe Black people? Here's what we owe. What Black people owe each other: do the best you can for yourself and the people in your immediate circle. If more of us decided to be, and I'm jaded by a career as a financial professional that gave me the leeway to be able to semi-retire when I was 37 and pursue a greater life, right? One thing that the United States as a culture got right is if I focus on just making sure me, my woman, and my children have safety, security, and education, the rest of the community benefits from that. I don't know about the days of looking. I mean, our leaders get murdered. Let's be clear about that. When we get leaders, they just get murdered. If we could just on an individual level let's not worry about the greater economy. Let's worry about, I'm going to learn what cryptocurrency is and how to save 10% of my income in a method that's going to put, I don't care how much or how little you make, that's going to make sure my money will be there if anything goes wrong. That's what we owe the community. The community doesn't start with looking across the street at your neighbor and complaining about what he's not doing right or wrong. The community starts by saying, look around me. Okay, am I making good financial decisions? Am I making good health decisions? Do I have my shit together? Did I purchase as much education as I can afford? And if all you can afford is a 2-year community college degree, that's all you get, but I'm not going to go into debt for it. That's what you owe the community. But you don't owe your death to anyone. You don't owe the risk of physical violence against your person or the institutionalized violence against your class to anyone. And woe betide the person or the Black person that tries to tell me otherwise.
And I don't think I think there's a whole lot of ground between death and taking care of you and yours. I think you can't really help others if you have not first helped yourself. And I think that is one of the things, I know that's one of the things that Harriet taught us. Like, she did not study about freedom and then hold classes about freedom. She got free and then was able to free others. And it's that freedom of others that I am focusing on, not to stay in bondage and push other folks out, but to get free and bring other folks with us. The idea that when my wave rises, I raise all boats. We are, not only are we Americans in this country, those of us who have been brought here through slavery, America is ours. And that is a very, very, I think, a very important distinction to make, that even while, there is a great deal of state violence that is enacted upon us daily, minute by minute, second by second, this is also our country. And it exists because of us, not just on top of us. And so while I definitely feel like it is important for us to get out from under this experience and to know what a different kind of liberation feels like, because while I am sure you are experiencing a fantastic, that Brazil is wonderful, Brazil is also not without its state violence on its Black citizens. And so I think
there's no place that's going to be the paradise we're looking for. Make your paradise. What did Green Machine say? Make your paradise at home. Let me acknowledge.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I very much agree with that. And I agree that as we are making our paradises, that we are also sharing that knowledge with those who are still struggling.
Okay, here's the thing, right? Before I even go to the, you talk about sharing, right? And how we can do things. Thank you, technology of the day. Look at this, right? Right now, I just posted a link to some of the public things I talk about with cryptocurrency. I do a lot more on my Patreon. Here's how I give back. I've been able to help dozens and dozens of people discover that the money that they have can be saved in a way that is not subject to government intervention. You should still pay your taxes on it. But how to take the dollars that they have and make them go farther in ways that are fundamental. It doesn't start with telling everybody what to do. It starts by making myself accessible. And I found that the people who become successful are the ones who come to me for the advice. Not the ones that I try to push it out to. But that there you go. Mm-hmm. Helping other people. Helping, let me be clear about this. Helping anybody else does not include me putting my mind or my body at risk. It does not include that. I'm not, people ask me all the time, what? When are you going to go back to the United States? Never. But your mom's there. I want my mom to come here. I might move from Brazil. Well, what happened when you move from Brazil? Maybe I'll live in Colombia for a few decades. I don't know. I've lived in 15 countries. I have no real, thing I have to follow because I've found freedom. Your friend Donnell Knox said, it's wonderful to live abroad. I've been in Warsaw, Poland. Yeah. I go back home every summer and some holidays to visit family. Long before living in Poland, I've been traveling to other countries to play music. Donnell, you know what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to shoot me an email. I'd like to connect with you and hear a bit more about your story. As a matter of fact, for anybody who wants to catch up with me, I'm going to give you
And I think the reason why I bring this up and why I was diving deep, Yusef, is because I don't think we diverge. You mentioned that this would be the point where we diverge, and I don't think we diverge. I think that, like you mentioned, technology has created such a way where you don't have to be in America. Like, you don't have to be in one place to still have an impact and still share knowledge and still get folks out. Harriet Tubman lived in a specific context. It is not the specificity of her context that I am saying we emulate. It is the mentality that she had within that context. She dreamed and saw something and created something that did not exist. And it was fundamentally liberatory. It was fundamentally about freedom. And in her context, freedom was a real material thing, like you were either a slave or you were not. It's much more nuanced than that now. And I'm not suggesting that you come back to the plantation. I am suggesting that you use the route of freedom. And I'm not even suggesting it. You're already doing it. But that's what I want to highlight, that you are using your route to freedom to shine that light for other folks to follow. And so I don't think we diverge. I think what you're doing in this channel is exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, first off, I had to go back to the drawing board for a quick minute, because one of the reasons I like to have other friends who are good with letters is because it forces me to widen my palette. Didn't know that word before. Liberatory. To free a nation or an area from control by a foreign or oppressive government. To free a group or individual from social or economic constraints or discrimination, especially arising from traditional role expectations or bias. Why, thank you for that.
Absolutely.
The more you know.
And you getting into my, and I just want to, I hope, I'm so glad that Donnell is on here, because this brother is an inspiration to me. Like, aside from all the shit he used to give me about my name, we cool now. But he is really, like, definitely talk to him about the work that he's doing and what it has meant for him. We grew up, I'm going to put my brother on blast. We grew up in Battle Creek, Michigan. If you don't know, if you know the name Battle Creek, it's because you've been reading your cereal boxes growing up. Because the only reason why there is a Battle Creek is because of Kellogg's cereal. Like we just a little blip in Southwest Michigan. Like there was no example that I knew of Black people who were going abroad or looking to be abroad or anything like that. And Donnell, who's the cousin of my best friend from elementary school, like his family has been living in Warsaw, and is just an example again of how where there is life, there is hope. Like your origins do not determine your conclusion. Like just the things that you grow up in and the place that you start, that's not all there is. That's not all there is by any means. Yusef, you are an example of that. I hope that for my ancestors, I become an example of that. But yeah, Donnell and Yusef, I hope y'all do link up for sure.
You know, talking about where we're from, because people, I don't know if people want to do the math on me at 43, but when I was in high school, like the internet didn't even become a thing until I was in college, a thing that you just had. I remember when you used to say, this professor said he's going to email me my homework assignment. And it was a drag to go stop what you're doing, find a computer, log on. Now you can't get people off computer. And this is where I was born.
Yeah, I'm 47. I'm 47.
This is where I was born. That's from Niagara Falls, New York.
I was all the way grown by the time I got online. All the way grown.
I was 18, which I wouldn't really consider a man grown until he's about 30. Our brains aren't done cooking yet. I'll tell you an interesting side story. I helped out with issues of investments and insurance, and life insurance especially. For the record, learn about life insurance. People here, we need to know more about life insurance. One of the things that ended up coming up is you learn from the older insurance agents that you talk to families about when their insurance policies and how they work. Did you know that we often have to explain to families why if you have 2 children, you need to put clauses that if you have a son, he can't get any of his benefits until after he's 30. A daughter, you can maybe give them to them at 25. You shouldn't, because at under 30, our brains still aren't done cooking. We're still liable. I mean, here's the thing. After 30, we're still going to do the same stupid and reckless shit. We're just going to know it's dumb and reckless, whereas under 30, you can kind of convince yourself it might be a good idea.
Maybe. I don't know. I feel like I done ran up on some mighty immature 50-year-olds, but it's cool. You know what I mean? It's all good.
Here's the thing. I agree, because it's every year it becomes the responsibilities of, and we can go into a totally different conversation on this another day, the responsibilities of adulthood have lessened every year. The level of responsibility that men and women have for themselves and for each other has diminished over time. So,
yeah, we're gonna have to talk about that another time, because it's almost time for me to go.
Are you abandoning? Are you leaving us on a high note? All right.
This is amazing. You know, we've been talking for an hour and a half, Yusef.
No.
This is phenomenal.
For me, it was BC and Kalamazoo.
Summers. You already know, Donnell. That brother,
So,
yes.
Let me
That
ask
was
you.
our start.
You earlier we touched on you being a writer. What have you written lately?
I'm a poet. I write poetry. I work at getting myself into other genres. You know, I've dabbled in playwriting. I try to do longer forms, but I'm a poet. I can't do nothing about that. Yeah.
Because I do, I write a lot now, but I find myself writing for other people. I don't know if you knew this, but a lot of people who come back, they do. I tell everybody all the time, you can always catch me as well on LinkedIn. And this is where I talk about myself professionally. I do editing, copy editing, proofreading. That's how I built my business overseas. I do quite a few things, but that's been a lot of the bread and butter. And when you go catch me on LinkedIn, I tell everybody, just skip my resume. It's a great resume. Don't get me wrong. I've got a lot of coaching, different things, but I say go all the way down to where it has the recommendations. This is where other business professionals and experts say, yes, YusefWateef is legit. Pay him what he asked for. This is where people put their professional reputation on my page and say, this guy is somebody I'm willing to stand next to and put my arm on his and say, he's got his shit together. And that's what I want people to look at first. I want you to come back. I've got some things cooking. I want you to, message me. Let me know what generally is good for you so you can come back. And I want you to also recommend a couple of friends, not just to watch this, but people that you talk to, anyone that you vouch for is someone that I would like to have here to be part of our conversations.
Right on. Yeah, let me send some. I mean, I put Donnell in there. I put Donnell in there, but yeah, let's hit up offline.
All right. Well, listen, everybody, thank you so much for being part of this. I appreciate you,
family.
And I hope everybody has a great day and be safe. And don't hang up, Nakachi. We're going to say something behind the screen.
Okay, I just want to say I